was talking. What's your reaction?
Well, it's very important. You know, what if I could just said is business needs to take a leadership role and really needs to lead the charge. It's a very important statement because I have watched over 20 years that I have been in this discussion, very much of a you first attitude, where businesses have been saying for a long time, quite rightly so, governments, you first give us regulatory certainty and then we're going to come on board. And the government's turning around and going, well, I'm not quite sure that I can jump into the cold water because I need to make sure that my country, my economy, my businesses are going to be competitive with respect to my neighbors. So this you first, you know, has led us into a very, very difficult dynamic, which is the result that we're seeing right now. And so to hear businesses stand up and go, well, we know that governments are getting there slowly, very slowly, but they're moving in the right direction. And in the meantime, we're going to take leadership. And they can take leadership, let's be clear, to a certain point. Because in order to make the kinds of shifts of capital that, that Michael is talking about, Michelle is talking about, is actually they need much more to know what is the long-term goal going to be so that those assets from the insurance companies, but not just insurance companies, from most of the large institutional investors and asset holders can actually shift in and align with these 90 trillion that President Calderon has been speaking about. So that shift has to occur. And that has to be hand-in-hand government with business together. We can no longer afford the you go first and I will follow attitude. We've just run out of time for that one.
All right, Lady Anne, gentlemen, we're going to take a short break now, but we will be back shortly with more from this climate change debate underway in Davos. Do stay with us. Time to take a sip of water.
Water. Water is water here. Fantastico. Is that yours? Esa es la mía, ¿no?
Yo creo que es la tuya. Laurent lo tiene del otro lado. Other side for you. Do you want some?
Yes.
Can I give you water?
Yes, dear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, dear.
There we go. Everyone's hydrated?
Yeah. Yes.
They say that, that Davos is a marathon and we should keep hydrated considering that. OK. Welcome back to Davos and welcome back to this debate on how to reach a global comprehensive climate change deal by the end of 2015 as we're looking ahead to the Paris conference in December. We are here once again with a stellar debate panel and we're going to get straight back into it. So now, we've already touched upon it. We've talked about how the ambition before the Paris conference is to build or to have a bottom-up approach, as in each country should bring their own contributions to the negotiating table, and then the idea is to bake them all into a wider deal. So far, though, the contributions that have been voiced by individual countries, they haven't been good enough in order to meet the 2-degree target, or to meet the target to limit climate change to 2 degrees. So my question to the panel is, how do you raise ambitions and how do you encourage countries to be braver and to be bolder? Laurent Fabius, I want to ask you, as the host of COP21, what are your thoughts?
First, I think that the companies and more generally the civil society can help. Because if they are convinced that it is a necessity, the politicians will have to deliver. And the decision in Paris will be taken by politicians because people will vote. That's the first thing. Second, as we've said a few moments ago, every single country will have to put its own contribution. Already we know that some countries or continents are in the vanguard. For instance, Europe has taken in October decision, which is good, which is in line with the ambition we can have. There are new elements. The agreement which has been passed before between US and China is quite new. Obviously, when calculation will be made, we shall see if it is enough. But it's brand new if we compare with what was the situation a few years ago. And my understanding is that when everybody will have put publicly its own contribution, there will be expertise. There will be calculation, which will be made by different elements. Yourself, Christina, you will have to make expertise. And then we shall see exactly where we are. And it will be, you know, Paris, it's not only the end of something, it's the beginning of something, a new impetus. And I think it will not be done within 1 minute, but it's a major shift and it's a beginning of a new awareness.
President Calderon, you've been speaking about the economic argument to reach a climate change deal. How do you persuade countries, though, that they need to get on board with those ideas? And do you think that that argument that you presented before will be enough?
Well, the point is the argument we have so far have not been enough. In the sense, talking about the consequences of climate change, it is really bold, but it has not been enough in order to mobilize people and governments and decisions. If I talk to the people in France and remember them, the heat wave some years ago that killed thousands of people in France, especially old elder people, and talk about the extreme events related with weather. In Philippines, the typhoon killed more than 6,000 people. So the extreme events are present. Are those events bold enough to persuade people? Maybe yes, with some minutes, some moments. And then the government say, well, me as president, me as prime minister, I have elections in 2 years, and these guys are talking about weather in 50 years. Well, just pass the ball to the next one. No, I'm talking that on top of the environmental arguments, we need to provide economic alternatives and even social alternatives. Think about China. China, by tradition, was a very difficult country in order to get the Chinese people to the table. However, it is clear, for instance, the air pollution in Beijing, which, according with the climate report, new climate economy report, caused thousands of people with diseases and premature deaths, for instance, and economic damages. More than 11% of the GDP in Beijing is lost by this kind of premature deaths. Well, these kind of phenomena associated with climate are moving and pressing probably decision makers in China to get the right direction. And this agreement between China and the United States is completely new in the landscape. Now, China needs alternatives, for instance, to phase out the production with coal, with renewable, and needs support to recover forestry, and needs support for a lot of things. And if I talk about China, I'm talking about sub-Saharan African countries. They need economic support, and they can provide, for instance, process to recover the landscape or the forestry there, as long as we can build an agreement in which there is an exchange and negotiations in which, yes, I establish a commitment as a less developed country, but at the same time receive some kind of support. Middle countries like Mexico or Brazil or Indonesia, we can do things, we must do things. And actually, we have done. In Mexico, we established the first law that establishing mandatory goals for climate change and carbon emission reductions, and Mexico could improve. Renewable energy is providing new alternatives for the people. Companies, even in the mining sector, companies are switching towards solar energy, and solar energy is providing energy for mining companies 40% cheaper than the traditional utility. So my point is, there are huge economic opportunities. Only, for instance, energy efficiency. Energy efficiency will fix more than half of the change we need to do in energy. And renewable is 80% cheaper than 8 years ago, especially solar. So the opportunities are there. Economic opportunities. If we can manage the environmental arguments, but on top of that, the economic opportunities, decision makers would say, well, it's not exactly a sacrifice. Actually, business community here in Davos, instead of thinking, how can I make more profits, which is valid, it's licit, we can say, you can make money, if we jump into the new economy, if the government take the right public policy decisions.
Feike Sijbesma, do you think that businesses are ready to listen to that? Are they willing to listen to that? Do they get that message?
Well, let me even go a step further and put the ball in the middle so that the politicians in December in Paris can make a next step. I think we need to continue with awareness. And politicians need awareness by their voters, because otherwise the politicians come in a difficult situation. That's one. Second thing, I think, and as companies we are advocating that, we need a price on carbon. We need a price on carbon preferentially in the whole world. And there might be local differences, but we need to have a price on carbon. And with today's oil price, which is lower, that is very relevant. Because what is competitive in technology is not only what is competitive, but it's also a matter of convention. We had one time in history that we did not pay for labor. It's called slavery. And we changed the convention. And we need to change the convention also that we need to pay for pollution and that carbon has a price. That's the second point. The third point, and as companies we are saying that, a price on carbon, even with a floor. And that is an offer we can do as companies to the politicians. Now, you need to make legislation. But we even, as a set of companies, said that is a wise thing to do. The third thing we need to do is pushing further alternative technologies. Solar, much more can be done in solar. Second generation biofuels, you're losing agricultural waste. We have a lot of that. And sometimes that needs investments in technology. Sometimes that needs different regulations and policies to make those new forms of energy really viable. Fourth, I would say, let's create more transparency in the financial world. Where have we invested our money in pension funds, in banks, etc.? How much is fossil linked, how much is not fossil linked? I'm not saying that you should invest here or there. Let's first create transparency where our money is. And then maybe the fifth thing is setting targets. Of course we need to set targets. But the problem, I think, in Copenhagen was we over-focused only on setting targets. And let's be honest, Mother Earth is not helped by only setting targets. Mother Earth is helped if we just take actions and make next steps. And
Christiana
companies
Figueres.
are ready to go.
Christiana Figueres, what's your sense and what's your opinion on that? Setting targets and the need for steady targets, medium term, short term, long term.
Well, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think FICA means is that mutually exclusive. You have to do both things at the same time, right? And we're all adults. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We do have to have action right now, because if we don't start this ball rolling, we're not going to get to any long-term destination. But we also need to know where we're going. And we do it in our everyday lives, right? When we get on my bicycle or my Prius car or whatever, I usually know where I'm going. And if I'm going on a long path where I don't know the road, which I usually don't, I set the GPS. And it tells me where I'm going and how long it's going to take me. Well, it's the same thing, right? I don't get into the car only with, the documents that I need for my meeting and making sure that the tank is filled, because I know that I have, I need the tank and I need the other battery also working for me. I need both batteries. But you have to get into the car with both things. You have to get in with your action that you have right now, as well as knowing where you're going, how long it's going to take you, right, and how much is it going to cost you. And then, if you know all of that, then as governments, because governments will have to set all that scenario up, then governments should actually stand away